Hey to all my real estate agent friends, what if I told you there were a way that you could buy the exact amount of income you want to earn by being in real estate? That's one of the beauties of being in real estate. A lot of people don't realize it, but I'm telling you, whatever amount of income you want to earn, whether it's 60K, 80K, 100K, you name the number, there is a pathway forward that you can in effect buy that amount of income to assure that you earn it year after year after year. So I'm gonna go sit down here at the table. I'm gonna walk you through and draw it out for you, what the concept is and how to practically take the first steps towards making it a reality to earn what you wanna earn by being in the real estate game. So let's check it out. So I got this new nifty tool here called the Kindle Scribe. I think that's what it's called. Let me draw this out for you. So we're gonna map out what I mean here. So a couple numbers you wanna know if you're in real estate, which is this, CAC and LTV. We're gonna focus right now on the CAC, but what is CAC? It's your cost to acquire a client, meaning how many dollars do you have to put in to end up with one of these? That's someone who's a member of your ideal target market. So if you sell houses to, if you deal with buyers, that's the buyer. If you deal with sellers, that's the seller. And it's probably gonna be two completely different numbers between what the cost is to acquire a buyer versus seller. But anyway, the LTV, that's the lifetime value of a client. And this is the missing piece for most real estate agents. Usually they don't know the first one, but most agents, we all say that we want referrals, but reality is most agents, if you look at what they actually do, they don't have anything that they're actively doing to stay in touch with past clients they close a deal with. So that's where LTV comes into play. We'll probably save that topic for another video, but going back to the CAC, the cost to acquire a client here, what I want to share with you is the concept of how do you arrive at what this number is. In order to do that, I'm going to walk you through a scenario here because there's all sorts of ways you can get business. You can get business by prospecting, your traditional methods, that's door knocking, cold calling, hosting and promoting open houses. You can do paid advertising. A lot of people like social media now, so those are three different buckets. You got cold market, you got social media, you got paid advertising, you've got your warm market, that's sphere of influence. So those are like four different buckets right there. What I'm gonna speak on specifically is what's the one where you can most predictably take dollars and put it in. Because you're gonna invest something into growing your business, into getting clients. Don't make no mistake, there's not a scenario where you get clients without an investment. Because you're either gonna invest dollars or you're gonna invest time. If you're trying to get by without investing anything, it sounds like you're probably just hoping that something falls in your lap, and that's not really a scalable or sustainable way to build a business. You want a way that you can predictably and repeatably acquire new clients, hence the CAC, what we were talking about here. So let's look at a scenario, right? So what if we wanted to take control of our business and instead of putting sheer time into it, what if we wanted to scale it up with dollars? What would it cost to buy a client? So one way you could go about it is by running ads on Facebook. But I want to be clear on one thing. Running an ad in and of itself will only take you so far because you can get leads and you can do that time and time again. You can even get a really low cost per lead. But my bigger question is, okay, how are you going to turn those leads into clients? Because most of them aren't ready now. It's very few and far in between. So most of the leads you're paying to generate, unless you have a very systematic way that you're going to stay in front of them time and time again, then they're going to fall by the wayside. But anyway, let's talk about the cost, right? Because say we were running an ad targeted towards your ideal target client, and let's say that we could run an ad and generate a lead for, let's call it $8 a lead. So $8 a lead. And let's say that, say these are all cold leads, most of them aren't ready to go now. And if you look at percentages of people moving, know that it's a single digit number, depending on the market, depending on the target market. You might be dealing with anywhere between 3 and 8% of the market moving. any given year. But regardless, let's say that since these are cold leads, most of them don't know you. Most people already have a friend, family member, someone they have in mind who's a realtor. So your opportunity is building the relationship with them. But say that out of 100 leads, you're able to capture one. So 1 out of 100 who you do have the opportunity to help and work with. So 1 out of 100 leads, and it's $8 a lead. So my question is, what's the CAC? The CAC here is 800. Why is it 800? It's 800 because you needed 100 leads to get a closing. So your cost to acquire a client is $800 based on what your ad spend is. So another way to think of that is you put $800 in, you get 1 commission. So what is a commission based on your average commission and sales price in your market? That's gonna vary depending on your market, depending on what you work for. I'm just gonna use a nice simple number here because the average is actually lower, but like my focal point personally would be new construction. New construction on average is gonna be in this range, if not higher. Actually like 300 to 400. New construction goes easily up to 500-600 plus. So this would actually be a low number if my target market were new construction, even though it's higher than the median or average in the market. But let's say that my average commission that I worked for was 3%. That's $9,000. And I'm just gonna use this as an example. So here's the big question you wanna answer once you do this math for yourself, your market, what you work for. Does this trade-off make sense? Would it make sense for me to put $800 in if I knew that predictably and repeatably based on this math that I can generate a full commission worth this much, even after broker splits? Even if you pay split fees, I mean, you could branch off and figure out what the bottom line is. But just even using these numbers, that's what's the ratio there? What's 9,000 divided by 800? Let me figure this out real quick. 9,000, so we're gonna look at this. So 9,000 divided by 800, that's 11 times return on investment. So meaning for every dollar I put in, I get $11 back. If you knew you could put $1 in and get $11 back, would you want to do that? And how often would you want to do that? But here's the key. You've got to have a strategy. You've got to have a system, because it's not just about acquiring the lead. Anyone can launch a Facebook ad and get a lead, even at a low single digit number. $8, is that a good cost per lead? It just depends on what your target is. You know, are you targeting buyers, sellers, new construction? And what's that math look like? But I'll tell you in general, I mean, if you're seeing a 10-to-1 return, it's not bad. It's not the best thing ever, but does it make sense to do that? Here's how I think of this. Let me draw something else out here. So the way that I think about this, and I think the real litmus test, if you have nothing else that you're doing to predictably and repeatably get new business, at least in this sort of way, I think the litmus test is basically what would be the alternative. And I'd say there's a couple alternatives. So the first alternative is that business falls in your lap. That's not a strategy, because hope is not a strategy. You're not gonna run a business off of hope. That's a sure way to assure that you get out of business, and probably quick at that. And unfortunately, that's a big piece of why so many people fail in this industry, or fail to really bring their goals to life in the process. You don't want that to be your strategy. And that's, I mean, it's crazy. That's what most people are operating on. Another thing that's very common that's actually been pivotal in many of my agent partners I've helped is agent-to-agent referral. So with an agent-to-agent referral, it's really between what you like. So just to recap what that means, that would be if you had an agent probably from another market area that had a client that needed help in your market area. So they're looking for an agent they can connect with. It's not uncommon that someone would pay a 25 to 30% referral fee. Or, I mean, it could be 25, I mean, it could be really anywhere in the range of 20 to 35% is what I would consider to be the most common range. But regardless, 25% is a number I see probably more often than anything. So let's use that. So meaning if you had an opportunity to close a deal from an agent who needed help in your market, they had a client moving or relocating, 25% referral is gonna be the most common. So 25% meaning that's your cost to acquire a client in agent-to-agent referral. But you don't have upfront costs, it's on the back end. But nonetheless, say that your commission was the same amount I shared in that example. So say I'm working on a $9,000 commission. What's 25% of that? 25% of 9,000 is, so here we go, $2,250. So $2,250. If I'm getting an agent-to-agent referral, that would literally cost me almost 3 times as much as if I could generate my own business for $8 a lead. So the question is, what is better? Is it better to have a situation where you can close a referral and pay this on the back end, or is it better to pay up front the $800 to get a closing? Personally, I would prefer the $800. And I know what a lot of people are gonna get caught up on is the fact that they gotta come out of pocket versus not have to pay anything to get a referral. But for me, the bigger deal isn't that, and it's not the fact that the referral is more, because 25%, like, so put it in terms of this, what's 800 is what percent of 9,000? You just wanna think about this real quick. 800 is 9%, if you're following what I'm saying. So 9% of the commission. That's not the reason, although they all support the argument. But to me, the biggest reason is I don't know when and if or where the next referral is gonna come from. It's not predictable. It's not something I have any control after. I'd rather have a situation where I could predictably and repeatably generate clients at will, regardless of if it were having to pay 25%. The problem is you can't do that predictably and repeatably with referrals because it's dependent on when the next referral comes in, and you don't necessarily know when that's gonna happen. But if you have a way that you can predictably and repeatably generate new clients, you can recreate that situation time and time again. That's when your business can become predictable and repeatable. So that kind of leaves the biggest question of how do you do that? And going back to what I started with, like, how do you really buy whatever income you want? So most agents I speak with, there's this goal that's super common in our industry. The most common goal I hear an agent has is that they want to make $100,000 if they haven't yet done that, especially not consistently. That's the most common number that people want to hit in our industry. So question is, how do you do that? Well, it's going to come down to knowing your numbers. So what is your CAC? What's your cost per lead? And what's your conversion rate? Like, what percentage do you convert? Because ultimately, if we're going back to the numbers we started with, if our CAC is 800, and our cost per lead were $8, those two go hand in hand. So, and we convert 1 out of 100. And then what's our commission? So what's our average commission? So if it's $9,000 and these numbers are all true, how many commissions will we need to generate to get to 100? Well, I can do the math, but you wanna make sure that you're accounting for the broker costs, right? So if we're just looking at 100 and saying, okay, 9,000 a pop, that's 11 closings. But in reality, you wanna make sure you factor your cost to do business between broker, board dues, and whatnot. So add whatever the cost is to this number. So I'm just gonna say we have an additional $20,000 in costs. So that's 120. So we're gonna redo the math. $120,000 divided by 9,000. We need 13. We gotta round it up though. Whenever there's a decimal, we need to do more deals. So 14 deals, right? At $800 cost to acquire a client. If we have the system to do that, that means we need to spend $11,200. And really you'd want to add that to your cost, not to get too complicated, but 11.2. So if we have a way that we can predictably and repeatably put dollars into our business, or as I like to say, nickels and dimes in to get dollars out, this is how much we would need to put in to get the desired income level here. But the only question is, what is your system to do that? What is your method? And if you have that locked in, you're golden as long as you run the play and generate enough leads to get that desired outcome. So if we want that many closings and we know that 1 out of 100 leads convert, we need 1,400 leads at $8 a lead. And we need to make sure that we're following the key steps of the system to make sure that we have the opportunity to ultimately convert that 1 out of 100. And ideally, even more ideally, what about the other 99 that don't convert? What is our way that we're gonna build the know, like, and trust factor with them so that at some point in the future, maybe not right now, but maybe a year, year and a half, 2 years out, that a certain percentage of those would start to convert. That way we can break through to the next threshold of income. So I'll leave you with this. That's the concept. I wanted you to understand the concept as far as how you could buy your desired income. It's gonna come down to having a strategy, a system at play. If this is something that makes sense to you and your biggest thing is you need help with what specifically would be the strategy, how could you take the next steps to get this in motion? This is something I'm hosting a training on. If you reach out and send me an email, I'm happy to get you details on when the upcoming training is. Absolutely free to learn. I've got a way that I'm helping my partners approach this so that they can get a lot more predictable thing in play in their business to acquire clients consistently, repeatably, so that they can break through to the income threshold that they're wanting to do. And the funniest thing is, like, I've successfully helped quite a few of my partners up to this point build a really strong referral-based business. You know, I've got multiple people in cities across the map that close 5, 10, 15, even 20 or more agent-to-agent referrals per year because we have a very systematic approach to that. But again, I love referrals. The only thing I don't love is you don't truly know when the next one's gonna come in. You could have a week where you get 4 in a week, and you could have weeks and weeks go by where you don't see a single one. But with this, that's not the case. If you know where to put your dollars to productive use, you can create clients out of thin air time and time and time again. And that's what any business does. It's not magical. It's not some magic formula or potion. Like, think of any business. You think anyone running ads on TV or billboards, you think they don't know what their CAC is? Of course they do. If they didn't, they wouldn't be putting so much money into it. You think they're putting a lot of money into it because it doesn't work? Problem is, most real estate agents are not operating from the standpoint of a real business owner, because part of having a real business is you know what your CAC is. So anyway, I hope that takeaway helps. If you apply it, I know it's going to completely change the trajectory of your business if you get to know what those numbers are and how to best acquire a client. And I'm here to help with it. Reach out, connect with me if you have any questions or if I can share any insights. And otherwise, I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll look forward to seeing you on the next one.